Claim where we expose the root causes of Lyme and chronic illness so you can finally heal and understand what's going on, get your life back. Today we get to finish the second half of this dynamic talk with Dr. Serena Teddy. She's a functional medicine practitioner and she's worked in the medical arena, was one of the front line on the telephone for the turn through COVID. So she's got a lot of very, very interesting experiences, gone through her own chronic illness issue, and her healing is pretty unique. So we're going to jump back in right here and continue this conversation. So here we go. Mm-hmm. And they come to me and it's like, okay, we can't approach this like everybody else does. Mm-hmm. We have to use a whole different system of evaluation and processing. What is really interplay with all that?
And that's, I think, my biggest fear with like the way medicine is going right now. It's such a big ancient system, with, protocols that are like, they hide it under the name of standard of care. But standard of care that doesn't work is no longer care. It's just the thing that you do, and it's not actually resulting in the outcome that we want. And I think it takes like a bunch of people like you and me, to really challenge the system, and we can gather more for the system to finally change. I wonder, like 5-10 years later down the road, will we have the same models of care of how we look at the human body today in the future?
It depends, because the systems are resistant to those changes. But if individuals can keep that freedom of thought and mind, you'll have individuals step out of that system to give whole different standards of care that the rest that are in the system cannot access or offer at all. And that is, the system wants to protect what they have, and they will attack anything that's not conforming to that with just a vehement violence.
I don't know about your clients. My clients, I deal with people who get bombarded by Instagram ads, all these different like famous people with their pretty whatever selling XYZ. And sometimes I feel like I'm fighting that, because I'm like, yes, the supplement promises XYZ, but that's your physiology shows this, your history shows this. It's like, I wonder, to your original statement, like we retain our freedom. Do we actually even have freedom when, we get ads bombarded at us all the time? Like, do we even is there a thought in our head that hasn't been influenced by something else?
Well, thoughts will always be influenced by things, and we choose what those influences are going to be. You go through schooling, from kindergarten all the way through high school, if you choose to go on beyond that. The mindset and the belief systems that those schooling try and indoctrinate us into will affect us. I was surprised, having children, that the Family Research Council finds that at least 80% of socialization skills is developed by the age of 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's correct.
The old world age of weaning. Our way of life gets set in those early formative years by how we're going to process and entertain things.
When I look at autoimmune disease, I always ask about childhood.
You always ask about what?
Childhood. Okay.
How they.
Because for me, when I look back at how I developed what I developed, I had to ask, like, how did my nervous system develop? Because there had been decades of dysfunction that occurred before the ultimate diagnosis at about age 20. And when I look at, like, when we look at the work of like Dr. Gamomate, all the different, autoimmune speakers, I think about there's an issue between like trauma and thought. And also, when I was trying to get off my medication, one of the hardest things to overcome was different specialists. And these are, big names in the world of autoimmune disease or, rheumatologists with many letters behind their name telling me that it was probably unlikely that I was going to be able to get off medication.
That's one of those really sad lies that,
Including people in functional practice.
right. My wife just told me somebody we worked with a long time ago. She was born with Lyme disease, failed to thrive, extremely sick, and we
Mm,
saw her as a late teen. She's terrified to even be measured because every time the medical doctors measured her, they threatened to call social service, have her yanked out of her home
mm.
because since the doctors couldn't figure it out, they had to blame the parents, and the parents had to be abusive.
Oh
So
my.
she hadn't cycled in over a year when we saw her, and after a few months, she finally let me measure. She was 3% body fat.
That's why she wasn't cycling.
Yeah, I mean that's one aspect, but
Yeah.
for female, that's lethal.
Yeah.
And she went through puberty again
Yeah.
in college. When she got free of Lyme disease, she actually started to think. She's a really creative person.
Yeah.
She met Mr. Right out in college, and they invited us out to their
Yeah.
wedding. And her
Yeah.
husband came up to my wife and I said, "I'm so glad you guys are here because if it
Yeah.
weren't for you two, this day never would have happened."
Yeah.
But she's now pregnant with her third child, and she had
Amazing.
all these medical people tell her that you will never have children because they couldn't figure out why she wasn't cycling. And it was a multitude of things.
Yeah.
And once those started to work, she'd call me up. She asked me, "What am I going to look like when this is done?" And I tell her, "We don't know because your body has never been allowed to absorb the nutrition you need to
Mm-hmm.
develop. So
Mm-hmm.
you are developing,
Mm-hmm.
you're maturing
Mm-hmm.
way later than most people typically would because you finally have this." And what a beautiful thing for
Yeah.
to take your hat pin and burst that bubble of you'll never have children. And they've got two very healthy children, she's pregnant with number three.
Oh, amazing.
A lot of that's interesting. I didn't think about that, but two of my children are pregnant right now too. My oldest daughter, she's turned, she might be 41.
Uh-huh.
She's pregnant with her fourth child right now.
Amazing.
And what a beautiful expression of just going, you guys don't know what you're talking about.
No, I wish like this conversation that we're having right now could be more mainstream, but it really isn't. It's like I hear about people healing. I hear about people getting better, and that there is a possibility for that happening. I worked with a patient who was itching for like 15 years. For 15 years, she walked around just with this like itching. We did some work, did some gut work, did some toxin work. Finally, within the last 6 weeks of just starting the protocol, her itching got like 50% better. And she thought she was gonna have to live with it for the rest of her life. But to what you're saying, like our body is so capable of healing, and yet what is being taught is not what is actually happening to my patients and what's happening to your patients. Like when your body is given what it needs, it actually will heal. It
Hmm.
has the ability to. How do we, I think as a responsible, and I'm sure you are one too, practitioner, how do we share this information with other new practitioners, so that we can.
It's interesting because people commonly, their belief systems aren't subject to reason, logic, all kinds of other things. They're resident in the heart, and they're going to stay there until you will them to change. So
That's,
to try
that's,
and get somebody to think of something different, but you look at what you're talking about in this mind body thing.
yeah,
I would coin that more in, which aspect is a dysfunction? Is that in the spirit man inside?
yeah,
Is that
yeah,
in the soul? Is that in the physical body?
yeah.
With all of the background I have in ministry,
Hmm.
we can address all of those aspects.
Hmm.
but the amount of people that are open to that is precious little.
You are so right. You are so right.
I was talking to somebody else earlier, and I, I remember a few different ministry situations. We got, the Lord had me run prophetic schools and doing deliverance ministry for 3 different seasons in my life. And one night a prostitute came in,
Hmm.
and there weren't any women other than her that night. Usually there was, but there wasn't. And she'd be pouring her heart out and stop and go, I can't believe I'm doing this in front of a bunch of men. And then she'd just go on again. And it was amazing. She walked in a prostitute. Next time I saw her was down the road a ways. Might have been a couple of years later. Saw her on the street. Said, hi, how you doing? She was married, committed,
And
satisfied, monogamous marriage, raising children.
what was the pivoting point for her?
It was that night of dealing with her past issues from a spiritual standpoint.
Yes.
And there's a few different ways to do that. That's one of the most complete ones that's there. And we started, Lord had us training people how to do this themselves. We would have them do their own rather than something they experience from external. So they would have the working tools when the
Hmm.
stuff starts to come back on how to
Hmm.
address it.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
really changed things in a huge, huge, huge way.
And
And
I find that to be true in the cases I work with too. It's like when you give that person that strength, and the tools to kind of help them out of different circumstances that keep them trapped in like anxiety or depression or whatever, the body seems to transform as well. Alongside the working on the emotional and mental piece has a transformative effect on the physical piece. And
mhm,
that seems to ring true in the cases that I've seen. The cases that heal the fastest, usually, if I can tap into the emotional and mental piece, they heal way faster than the ones that if I just work on just the physical body. So
right. And you can offer that. The amount of people who will take you
take it.
up on that offer is way less than what really need to. That's the bridge that is so actually that's the chasm that's so hard to cross, and you literally have to
Yes,
build a bridge and convince
yes,
somebody that that
yes,
bridge is the way to get across that before
yes.
they're open to it. Sometimes it's like, well, yeah, it's about time
Mhm.
somebody wants to address that. But most of the time, you just get this pushback of, I don't want somebody to get into my past.
Right. Well,
Because
there's also the belief that my physical body has got nothing to do with my emotional and mental piece. They're separate things.
yeah,
They're not connected
uh,
whatsoever. There's that
I've,
strong belief on that, right? You got psychiatry, then you got like internal medicine. Those two do not talk to one another.
yeah, I was on a podcast a while back with a psychologist, and it was the longest podcast I'd ever been on. And the thing I presented to get on there was there's a lot of people with this depression issue going on with abandonment issues, so
Hmm.
forth, issues that are all beat up because of chronic illness. It's not a
Hmm.
process that starts in the brain. It's a
Hmm.
physical issue that's there, and we dialogued about that a whole bunch of different ways. And say
Hmm.
something, he'd flip out a bunch of studies about a bunch of things, and it kind of calmed down toward the end. At the end of the talk, he says, "Wow, you've really humbled me today,"
Hmm.
in a very toned down but profound statement. And I said, well, humility is one of the most noble characteristics of man.
Hmm.
And it really is. A lot of people are afraid of that, but it is
Hmm.
truly noble people have a humility about them. They may be
Hmm.
very confident, but there's a
Hmm.
humility about them. And um, it's,
The ability to be vulnerable and learn.
mhm, yeah. And you look at human biology, which we both work in that arena, you
Hmm.
cannot take any way of study and isolate just one aspect of it. because
Yes.
we're so interactive. So
I'm curious. What are your thoughts on peptides?
that's a really interesting thing because they become a really vogue thing and they're sold quite a bit. The
Yeah.
reality is peptides are a combination, they're short chain amino acid chains,
Yeah.
is what they are. And when you really heal the gut and you fix the microbe, you fix microbiome, you fix all of the you address all the food intolerance issues. So you
Mm-hmm.
really have something that's working. There's no
Mm-hmm.
need for peptides
Mm-hmm.
because your body's making and assembling all of those. Something in a molecular physiology book that
Mm-hmm.
I finished years ago that really surprised me. Do you know where 80% of the proteins are built in the body?
By the GI gut, a microbiome. Where is it made?
The liver.
Okay.
And those, you can take the same protein chain in the soil.
I want to make sure I get my physiology right. But the gut does make some, but the majority is made in the
No,
liver.
the gut breaks it down so you can absorb chains.
Okay.
You can absorb the fractions. The assembly, 80% in the liver, and the rest are in different sites throughout the body. So if you take the same protein chain, whether you're talking something really short or something really long that you see in the soil,
Mm-hmm.
and then the microbes, they start to interact with that and they'll change it and make
Mm-hmm.
that so that the root systems can absorb that and
Mm-hmm.
they bring that up into the plants and then you got different critters eating on those.
Mm-hmm.
You can say that and you go through all the animal kingdom, reptile kingdom, fish kingdom, bird kingdom, all that. You get all the
Mm-hmm.
way up to us. You can have the same chain, but it will be folded in different shapes.
Right.
And those shapes will all have a different frequency of vibration in
Right.
them. So man's the highest frequency as far as all that is. And 80% of that assembling, folding into
Mm-hmm.
shapes, and setting up harmonic vibrations is all
Mm-hmm.
done in the liver.
Mm-hmm. So
So,
when we talk about the gut microbiome making neurotransmitters, which are different from peptides and amino acids and whatnot,
mhm.
how does
so,
that go ahead?
what happens inside of the gut and the microbiome is doing the bulk of the digestion
Right.
as far as that goes, because the gut wall is really not touching it. The gut you got the pancreatic enzymes that are thrown in there. You got the bile thrown in there for breaking up the fats into small
Yeah.
particles, so
Emulsify. Mm-hmm.
microbiome can work on it. You have all these different interactions going on in there that the gut isn't passive in. It just sets the stage for all this to really happen. And when you look at digestion, it will take long chain oils and it'll break those down into small chains. Those get reassembled. It'll take long
Mm-hmm.
chains of proteins, breaks those down to amino acids, where it's primarily just absorb amino acids. Those get assembled back in the liver, which
Mm-hmm.
is just a short venous pathway from the gut to liver. The
Right.
liver catches all the blood that's returning. When you start
Right.
looking at things like this, when people are having problems with protein issues, it's
Yeah.
because of either assembly or breaking down
Mm-hmm.
problems. It goes on, there's ways where you can measure that,
Mm-hmm.
and um, it lets you know where those problems are. And as you start to really resolve the root issues,
Right.
it fixes all the protein assemblage, and there's no need to add the peptides.
Mm-hmm.
The peptides are given in a situation where there's still inflammatory issues. The gut's not completely healed. The
Mm-hmm.
microbiome isn't completely healed. The gut can't
Mm-hmm.
do what it needs to. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to feed the liver
Mm-hmm.
with bigger chains so it
Mm-hmm.
has less work to do because it's overwhelmed with toxicity because the
Mm-hmm.
gut's leaking.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Or the
using all of its energy into trying to detox and it can't do anything else.
which is why like a lot of the oral peptides don't work as well because of the digestion to what you're saying. I mean, one of the biggest drug on the market that started out as an oral agent, eventually got turned into an injectable, and now, everyone's on it. And now we're starting to see like, oh, it does work. It does impact and affect and change people, but the oral versions don't work as well. Now, I get a lot of patients asking me about peptides, and my viewpoint is similar to yours, which is like, we really are in the very early days of figuring out what peptide does for our physiology, and they are technically natural because our liver makes them. However, to add an additional something, it almost feels like we're trying to make a wish come true. I want to be thinner, and therefore I'm going to take this peptide.
Mm-hmm.
I want to gain more. I don't know. I want to improve my longevity. I'm going to take this other peptide. But to me, my feedback to them is like, we don't know eventually what all of these peptides do in our body. We think it does one thing, but there are receptors everywhere in the body. So we really don't understand the full effect of taking these peptides.
Well, one of the big issues that no one wants to bring to the table in that whole discussion is the quality of the proteins the peptides come from.
Yes, that's the sourcing problem.
When you look at a quality protein, it's
Right.
going to have the proper chain, it's going to
Right.
have the proper folding, it's going to have the proper frequency of the
Yep.
different parts, and it's the energy we take out of food
Mm-hmm.
that we work with and energizes everything. So you take something like a hot dog, people
Mm-hmm.
think that's really good. It's one of the biggest causes of brain cancer in children,
Mm-hmm.
hot dog.
Because of the
And
chem.
people think that's just fine. I remember
Yeah.
going on a camping trip one time. The one dad that brought his two sons,
Uh-huh.
he was a military guy. He just brought this great big huge cooler that's full of
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of ice, and all there was this biggest pack of hot dogs I'd ever seen, and I think some squirt mustard. No
Okay.
buns, nothing else. And that's what they're going to eat the whole time they're out there. His two sons were, one of them called me dad, and the other one acted like I was his dad too, quite a bit. And I show up and I start cooking dinner, and they're kind of drooling quite a bit.
Salivating.
I look at him and go, well, what do you got to add in what I'm doing? So I was making a Mexican thing, and all they had was hot dogs. And I'm looking like, do I really want to put hot dogs in there? But it's the only thing you could add, and we just accept that and all that. But
Yeah. I mean,
we don't know where those come from, and we have all these herbicides, we have these pesticides, we have all these other things that go in with stuff that the industry does not filter out.
yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
the real question is, where they come from? How clean is that source? What kind of toxicity is with it? What kind of resonant frequency do you have in the interaction of those peptides?
Mm-hmm.
And how close to natural is that? And
Mm-hmm.
the real reality is, I've been doing this for a long time. There are not many people in the industry that's been doing this as long as I have. We've never needed to use them
Right.
simply because I've got a very unique way of dealing with the gut. I openly
Yeah.
state the gut is the hardest organ in the body to heal. You got so many
What do you,
jobs. What?
why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, it turns over and makes a complete new lining every 24 hours when we're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Second, it's only one cell thick, so it's
Mm-hmm.
extremely vulnerable. It
Mm-hmm.
has virtually no integrity. It's assaulted with everything we eat. Different
Mm-hmm.
cultures to different degrees. In America, the use of herbicides and pesticides, there's only a few nations that have higher use of herbicides and pesticides. Australia, New
Mm-hmm.
Zealand are on the top of that list as far as
Mm-hmm.
that goes, but Europe doesn't. Asia
Mm-hmm.
doesn't.
Parts of Asia.
Okay, South and Central America, they're manipulated by our herbicide, pesticide, big ag companies to use our products.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got all these different dynamics going on that the toxicity level in our food supply is criminal.
Mm-hmm.
It's constantly being assaulted, and that assault paralyzes the microbiome. It
Yep.
paralyzes the detox pathways, it paralyzes
Agreed.
the absorption pathways, and blows huge holes in the gut.
Agreed. Agreed.
So we have all these different dynamics going on. The reason why 75% of the immune system's in the gut is because that's the primary access that anything adverse to our health would come in through, is through the gut.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's its first line of defense right in there. So we have all these things that almost no one talks about, almost no one measures, and people have these programs to deal with stuff that
Mm-hmm.
don't deal with the individual idiosyncrasies of one
Mm-hmm.
individual to the next.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
though they go through programs, they don't ever achieve what they needed to achieve. You hear people talk about, well, I'm better. Yeah, but are you well?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I hear that all the time. And
And
programs are an easy way to sell a service, not necessarily, the best way to get a patient better. They're just an easy way to sell a service. It
yeah,
takes the idea is like you take something you've done 1,000 times and simplify it into 4 steps. And if people follow all these 4 steps, you can mass produce care to a bunch of people. But from what I've observed, having been, part of a program at one point, because I used to work at a practice that did that, and also seeing people who have been in through a program, you're right. You have to individualize the care to specifically that person.
hmm
And
and
you have to see,
that's where everything fails.
yes,
So we got somebody else in the waiting room, so we'll have to end this one. This has been
sounds
a
good.
fantastic conversation. I really appreciate it a lot. Appreciate you coming. Well,
Yeah.
we'll put a link to your contact in the show
I'd love to
notes.
keep in touch because I think I can learn a lot from you.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks. Have an awesome day.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Okay, bye. Well, thanks for joining us for this. I hope you enjoyed this quite a bit. Dr. Serena is just a real special person, as you can tell. And we brought out a lot of interactive key highlights in caring for people that commonly aren't talked about here. Not a lot of people we can actually do that with. So hopefully you enjoyed all this. We covered why people fall through the cracks and really why things need to be addressed in a whole different way. So put a review on here, share this with your friends, spread the word around. We'll get more people on the track of getting their life back. So thanks. Have a great day. Bye.